What do you think it means to be included?
I think these kind of platforms where people can hear from Muslims, not about Muslims, and hear from Islam, not about Islam, is something that we really need to do more of. Unfortunately, many of the Islamic narratives are being said and told by non-Muslims for whatever reason. I think it's a good practice if you are really into this kind of inclusion and really understanding one another, is to extend that arm of I'd like to hear about you from you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ahmed Daif, and I'm a professor at the Industrial Technology program here at Cal Poly. I teach operation management, supply chain management. I was born and raised in Egypt before I moved to Canada, where I finished all my engineering studies and all the way up to PhD. I worked in industry for some time and I bounced back to academia. And I moved to San Luis Obispo here 6 years ago. So happy to be here. And yes, this is about myself. Married with 4 kids. I'm a very outdoor person. I dive. I play all types of sports. I like acting. I was part of the theater group in my school and college. And yeah, and also I like reading a lot. So that's me.
Sweet. Ramadan is coming up with the
It's either
crescent
Thursday
moon
or
of the
yeah.
23rd.
So it's either a Thursday or a Friday. So the Islamic calendar follows the lunar calendar, which is 11 days shorter than the typical solar calendar. The month is either 29 days or 30 days. And this is why we end up basically 11 days shorter than the solar calendar, which makes basically Ramadan a very interesting, dynamic, moving season. So in my lifetime, I fasted Ramadan in all seasons because every 33 years, you get one extra lunar year, which means Ramadan will definitely come for some good years in summer, in spring, in winter, in fall. And definitely summer is the toughest. Winter is the best because we have the shortest days. All part of the experience, and every season has its own flavor with Ramadan.
Hmm. And so, what are you anticipating for with sort of like? I guess it's a spring. It feels like winter right
Yeah,
now.
so
It's
this is
raining
kind
a
of a
bit.
springish, summerish kind of zone. When we start end of April, finish end of May, basically you get still some long days because we have the time saving clock, but we end up usually fasting around 14 hours, 14 15 hours. But as tough as it sounds, the more you practice it and the more basically you do it since you're young, the more you are ready to do it, and you get through it. It's usually difficult the first maybe 2 3 days, again, especially if you are very used to have your early coffee in the morning. By the time caffeine is out of your body, by the third quarter, basically you're good to go. And again, this is generally a theme that you'll find in many of the Islamic worships, like the prayers, for example. You pray 5 times a day. Again, it can look and sound like a lot, but they are very short. And again, you get used to it. So, and in general, whatever you are trained for and you really get used for it, you go beyond the physical commitment of it into enjoying its spirit and its meaning. Which maybe gets us to the meaning of Ramadan, if you'd like me to speak about it.
Yeah, please. Let's go there.
Absolutely. I'd like definitely to share this with everybody. So there are a lot of spiritual meanings in Ramadan. And on the top of the list, and this is something that definitely makes it worth the whole experience, it's a self-disciplinary, concentrated program where basically you get back the driving seat and the control of your own self and your own desires. When you deprive yourself voluntarily from the basic, simplest thing that are very legitimate to everyone, like eating and drinking, and you do this willingly, you basically, by the end of the month of Ramadan, come to reach a point and a position where you can control that desire and these calls of yourself that calls upon anything else, because you already had your basic instincts, in a sense, and needs under your own control. So that self-discipline, that self-control exercise that we do every year is a reminder that we are still in control. We are humans more than anything else that can take a decision and follow their will to control their desires and their needs. And this gets you in a very high spiritual state. You really feel that you respect yourself. You basically feel that you are more on your spiritual side rather than your animalistic side, in a sense. And this is a very important purification approach in Islam in general, to always highlight the importance of balancing between your earthy components and your heavenly components, your spiritual component. Ramadan is a season where the spiritual component is highly manifested to get us back on track, in a sense. So this is one of the main fruits and meanings of Ramadan. There are a lot of other things, like, for example, it's a good reminder for the haves about the have-nots, and how what you do voluntarily of going through a very limited period of hunger and thirst is basically the daily routine and the daily reality of many people across the globe. So you end up feeling for them more, not just on a theoretical basis, but you really went through it. And it's a good reminder of the bounties and the privileges that God gave us, so that we are more thankful, we are more willing to pay back and outreach for those in need. Also, one of the beautiful things about Ramadan is the community component of it, an element of it, and how all Muslims in different communities come together, break their fast together, pray together, celebrate the end of Ramadan together. So there is a community element into it. This is basically the festival of the Muslims. This is the end of Ramadan is like exactly the Christmas time, where everybody is on that cheerful mood, the family gathering mood, everybody's happy. And we are happy, not just because this is a celebration time, but we are really more happy because we did it. We got through it. We managed to be victorious over our own desires. And it's something that's definitely worth celebration.
And the communal focus, it sounds like that is going to be the thing that with this month of Ramadan will change the most significantly with what's going on in the world right now. And so it sounds like maybe it'll be more, rather than a communal focus, it'll be much more like familial focus.
Yeah. To be honest, this is my first Ramadan in a pandemic. So, but absolutely, I can imagine definitely that we'll be missing that communal component. So, for example, here in San Luis Obispo, We used to break our fast together as a community every weekend. We rent just a hall in any hall, and we basically break the fast together. Every night we pray by night together, because the nights of Ramadan are very blessed nights in Islamic tradition. With the mosque being closed, in a sense, we will not be doing this except in our homes. So maybe it will be an over intense family community kind of activity. But yeah, I agree with you that everybody is speaking about that, and not that happy that we'll be missing that component. And we are hopeful that maybe by the end of Ramadan, end of May, things will be better, so that at least we get the celebration and the feast of post-Ramadan together as a community. But you never know. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the reality that we are living in now.
Yeah. So what is the sort of historical significance of this month? Because it's one of the 5 pillars. The practice of Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars, and the first and the last day of the month have some pretty serious significance in there.
Yeah, so giving the context, historical context of Ramadan, Ramadan is the month when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, got his first revelation in Mecca. This is when Angel Gabriel came to him with the revelation that he's a prophet, and he's basically on a duty to tell people about God and call them to God. So this is the start of the Prophet Muhammad prophethood, and this is the start of the revelation of the holy book of the Muslims, which is the Quran. This is the main historical significance of Ramadan as a month. But the fasting of the month in honor of that started actually almost 15 years after the prophethood of Muhammad, peace be upon him. So it was not actually a part of the Islamic tradition since day one. It was later on prescribed as one of the 5 pillars of Islam. There are verses in the Quran that speaks to that, and speaks to Ramadan as the holy month where the Quran started, and it's a month that helped believers to basically reach a higher degree of piety, as we discussed earlier, through this kind of self-control. An interesting thing about that, even and it's mentioned in the Quran, that God says that it reads in Arabic, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. Which means basically, I read this in Arabic, means that the month of Ramadan is blessed because it is the month that the Quran was revealed into it. And it's that book that started that month is the book that will guide people to God. And also it says that you, all Muslims, or you Muslims, will fast as the people before you have been fasting. So there are different fasting traditions in Judaism and in other traditions of the holy books. So fasting is not something that's kind of an Islamic invention.
And so, what are some of your favorite parts of the month, and then what are some of the most challenging pieces of that as well?
So, other than the beautiful food, usually depending on the culture and the background, every culture has their own kind of special meals for Ramadan that are usually tasty and fills you up as a makeup for what you have been doing for the whole day. Yeah, as I said, me personally, it's that spiritual uplifting that this month brings to your heart and to your soul. And really, maybe by the end of the first week of that, you really feel that you are much lighter. You are much connected with God, in a sense. Your prayer tastes differently. When we read the Quran, meanings are flowing differently, in a sense. And this is basically, again, it's there's kind of maybe a spiritual chemistry equation. The less earthy and animalistic stuff in you, and the more spiritual stuff in you, the more basically you are lighter and you uplift. And vice versa, in a sense, the more you are attached to this world and to the materialistic day-to-day rat race we are in, the more you forget about who you are as a human being. So for me, it's that amazing reminder that get me back to track of who I am as a human being on this earth for a very limited period of time, trying to know why am I created and how can I fulfill the mission that I'm created.
Yeah. And so how can non-Muslim people support their Muslim friends who are in the midst of Ramadan?
Thanks for asking this question. So, well, there are maybe a couple of things I can speak to in this regard. First, understanding and realizing that we are fasting, and thus it will be difficult at the beginning to adjust. So any kind of moral support and basically uplifting their spirit about that, and I know a couple of friends who even sometimes fast a couple of days with us just out of moral solidarity in a sense. And also the other thing is is to speak about it, and just get everybody, or get the Muslim community to feel that everybody is acknowledging and celebrating also this season. It's not something that a community is doing in isolation, but it's basically a seasonal thing. The Muslim community is doing everything in it to the max, but other communities are happy to speak about it, discuss it, be part of maybe the break fast. I can assure you're gonna get some good meals, hopefully with this social distancing thing. I don't know what to do, but Ramadans. But yeah, being part of that and opening the avenue to your Muslim friends and fellows to speak about Ramadan, ask them about Ramadan. They'll be happy to speak about it. As a faculty, for example, I respect a lot my colleagues when we have our, for example, faculty meeting in Ramadan. They asked me, is it okay to come in with our coffee mugs? I say, of course, guys, come on. But just that gesture of that we feel for you, and we know that you are basically practicing this tradition, and it makes a lot of difference in that regard. So be part of that, engage in that through discussion, sharing some of the traditions, with this permissible, maybe after this what we're going through. But yeah, this is maybe a couple of things that you can do.
Yeah, it seems like so many pieces of this month are focused on the community, whether it's communing with God or communing with one another in this sort of time of
yeah, and let me speak to this quickly. So for example, one of the things about Ramadan is that we are also obliged and commended at the end of Ramadan to pay specific amount of charity for all needy people, so that when we get into the festivals of the post-Ramadan, nobody will be in a position that they can't celebrate, and they can't basically share in that. And it's recommended to give it to them before the end of Ramadan, so that they can get ready to, for example, buy new clothes for their kids, or if somebody is in debt, they can get out of that. So back to your point about the communal part of Ramadan, yes, there is a big component of understanding Ramadan through that communal perspective.
Yeah. And in Muslim majority countries, so far as I understand, there are public announcements for when to pray for the 5 times, and then when the breaking of the fast is, like,
yeah,
this is when it is. But a country
so
like
usually
the US,
the typical, well, it's again, it's how you adjust your clock in a sense. So a typical day in Ramadan is a little bit different than a normal day outside Ramadan, because the meals are different. So we wake up very early before sundown. So for example, the sun dawn is around 5 a.m. these days. So you'll find a typical Muslim family waking up at around, for example, 4 a.m. or 4:30, which is extremely early. They prepare this kind of a meal. We call it suhoor. and it's a highly recommended to do that. So we eat and we drink water or whatever, and basically once the sundown kicks in, we stop. So this is and this is kind of and we pray the sundown prayer. There is a prayer of the sundown. And then also when it comes to the sunset, before the sunset by maybe half an hour, you see the family preparing for the big meal of the breakfast. And it's kind of a 2 meals day. In between, you can definitely pick up some snacks, but you usually fill it up at that breakfast meal, and you sleep on that, and you wake up before the dawn and eat again. So this kind of disruption to the daily routine requires readjusting in the daily clock. As you said, majority countries will find the calling for that time of prayer and that time of eating through the microphones in the mosques and in the TV. Here in the US, you do this internally in a sense. So basically, the moms and the dads wake up the kids to do this, put the alarms on, and yeah, you basically navigate with what's available. And it's part of the adjustments that take a little bit some time in the first 2-3 days, and then you quickly pick up this new routine and enjoy it till the end.
Yeah. Wow. So, last question here. Are there any stories that come to mind when you think of past months of Ramadan, whether from your teenage years or through your graduate education or any time
Yeah.
in the past, early ones with the family?
Well, there are a lot of times where Ramadan came into critical points where you have this internal struggle about should I really fast this day or not? For example, having a very critical exam, or
Hmm.
having a very important thing that requires full attention and not in the mood. And I remember many moments where you feel that you're about at that very close to the breaking point, but again you say, no, this is basic. I'll go through this, and the joy of really winning that battle is unbelievable. We have a saying by Prophet Muhammad where he said that the one who fasts will have two joys, moments of joy. The moment when he or she breaks their fast because of that victorious spirit that you have over yourself, and the moment when you meet your Lord because you fulfill the obligation in a sense. So Ramadan is accompanied with a lot of these moments and incidents where you were really thinking and double thinking whether I should do this or not, should I really fast or not. When it comes, for example, to a PhD defense day, for example, or a very important deadline that you have to meet by tomorrow and you have to be in full attention. And as a typical human being, you'll go through this kind of self-struggle, but the joy of not submitting to that is what I usually remember with Ramadan. I also remember Ramadan was very unique. A couple of times I spent Ramadan in Mecca.
Hmm.
The couple of times I went there, and with hundreds of thousands of people breaking their fast together, congratulating one another for going through the day. Again, this communal solidarity feeling is something that I always remember.
Wow. Of
Uh,
course.
and other than that, basically, I wish everybody in these very difficult times and moments, by the time you hear this video, probably will be still in the COVID-19 pandemic. So please stay safe, stay strong. We believe in science to defeat that, but also we believe that we can learn a lot on a spiritual level from this unique experience that we are going through, in terms of maybe contemplating and reflecting on uh, uh, how weak people are in general and how vulnerable we are sometimes. So we need to balance between the spirit and the body, in a sense, the full reliance on our selves and knowledge, and also turning back to God in moments like these. So it's a COVID-19 kind of moment, and hopefully I'll meet everyone, not virtually, but physically, without any kind of social distance when everything is over. Thanks again. And we always say in Arabic, Ramadan Mubarak, or blessed Ramadan to all of you.
Thanks, Ahmed.
The first day of Ramadan, to be honest, I'm not. Also, there's like calculate astronomical calculations that you could do. But
Right.
generally speaking, it's like once the end of this current month, Shaban, comes to an end, or is like coming close to the end, you have like people like with telescopes looking for the crescent, which then marks like the official beginning. Some people do just go based on the astronomical calculations and like, yeah, that's good enough. But others are like, no, like we need to see it. Because like in the Quran, it says like, I mean, paraphrase, but like when you see the month is when you begin.
Gotcha.
And so some people are like, no, like astronomical calculation is just the calculation. We need to like physically see the crescent, which marks the new month. So it's usually like if like you type on Google and it says like, oh, the 23rd, then it's like it could be the 23rd, might be the 24th type thing.
Depending on when you see the moon.
Yeah.
See the crescent.
The crescent of the new month.
There was I was reading something about if you're in space, it's like harder to tell when Ramadan starts because it's like where's the moon? So I guess those people just go on the calculation.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be interesting. That'd be wild. Yeah, so like in the Quran, chapter 2, verse 183 through 187, kind of gives out like some brief outlines about like what Ramadan is, or kind of like some parameters regarding Ramadan. And in like the first that first verse 183, it goes like, "Oh, you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you as it was for those before you, so that perhaps you will become mindful of Allah." And like the word mindful used in the Quran or like in Arabic is taqwa, which I mean has like doesn't really have a direct English translation, but it could be kind of like there's like fear and consciousness of God. So it's kind of like a state of the heart and kind of a state of the heart that and like the consciousness of God, and like the like kind of knowing that He's present and like that He's like not like He knows like what you're doing, which like ideally leads you to do righteous deeds and abstaining from things that are like forbidden. And it's this like sort of that's kind of like a taqwa or like that God consciousness, that fear is like kind of a base criteria for your status with God. So again, as I kind of said, it's like a heart state. It's a state of the heart kind of. And the more kind of taqwa you have, or the more God consciousness, the more fear you have, the higher your status will be, and like vice versa. For one, you're learning like self-restraint and control of yourself and your actions. And because you're doing like you're kind of doing it for God again, that is like the whole idea of like taqwa that we were just talking about, where it's like restraining yourself from doing something that you're not supposed to do, or kind of just having that like God is the main thing in my mind. Like I'm hungry, but I'm doing this for God. And so it's kind of like, throughout those hours, you're like God is in the forefront because of all these like inner desires that it's like, oh, I'm hungry, oh, like I want to do this, oh, I want to do that, or like, oh, like because you're supposed to like also abstain from like bad thoughts and like and whatnot. And so and like words and actions, you're not like if you tend to curse a lot, you're not supposed to like curse. Or like you want to you want to kind of take as much control of yourself as possible. And so that's I guess like yeah, and even like if you see like scientifically or whatever, like how long it takes to change a habit, right? It takes something like 21 days or something, like 3 weeks for a habit to be changed. And so it's kind of like this month is like 1 month of the year to kind of erase bad or like to form new habits and ideally kind of like like get rid of bad habits, kind of attain some new better habits.
It's supposed to have an impact for your whole year.
Yeah, it's like a refreshing. It's like a purification of like the heart and the soul, um, such that it will, yeah, purify your actions, purify your thoughts, purify kind of instill those better actions, because you're also throughout the month, it's like abstaining from the wrong, but also increasing in good and righteous deeds. So like, you're supposed to read more Quran, you're supposed to like pray more, you're supposed to like give more charity, do more things that are good. And so, ideally, of course, as well, like those carry over to the remaining months.
Right. So how have you fasted every Ramadan of your conscious life?
No. So Ramadan or fasting is, for me, I've been fasting, I believe since first grade. Not and that was kind of just more of like, I was like, oh yeah, I want to do it. So I started doing it. I believe it was first grade. And yeah, ever since then.
Oh. So you're 23, 24?
23 now.
23. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. This is your 18th fast.
I guess so.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite parts of Ramadan?
Mm-hmm. I guess there's multiple. Uh, I think, well, kind of overall, the like indeed the closeness that I do get to feel, like I like feel getting to toward God. Like it's always kind of a nice and like tranquil type feeling to kind of get that, when you kind of when I'm able to devote myself more. Like these past couple of years being in school and doing it have kind of posed a challenge, because again, like if you're trying to put God in your mind all these times, like throughout the time, but then you're in school, and like school is very demanding of your attention and time,
Yeah.
and effort. Like you're not putting in that much time, and so you don't feel like, I wouldn't say I've gotten as much out of these past 2 years being in school and doing like fasting and whatnot during the month of Ramadan. Um, but I guess of the years past, kind of just like being able to like fully engage, because it used to be during summer, so like you don't have anything to do except
Yeah.
like kind of be more engaged. And in those times, for like the majority of these 18 years, it was during summer, and I get to really engage, like with the worship and whatnot, and kind of like you really do feel like getting close and kind of the spiritual renewal. Um, and then also kind of just like the family and community aspect. So it's kind of like during, we generally speaking, we do eat dinner together at home, but kind of just like that. And then also, there's the night prayers, like optional, but there are night prayers at the mosque, like after you break your fast, like an hour and a half or so after. And then that's like,
Every day.
every day, except yeah, every day up until the second to last night.
That'll be hard this year though. With
Yeah, so I don't believe it's happening this year,
yeah.
because for one, it is optional, and even like something like Friday prayer, which is obligatory, given like the situation of like plagues and whatnot, there's like you're supposed to just pray at home. Like that obligation, doesn't necessarily become like voided, but there's a more important matter to kind of be like thankful for.
Gotcha. So in Muslim majority countries, there are these public announcements for when to pray and when to break fast throughout the day. So you get the 5 like notices for the times of prayer, and then the notice for when the sun's gone down or the moon's come up. When the sun goes down.
Sunset.
Yeah. But in the US, you don't have that. So how does that change the way that um, the way that the month goes?
Um, it makes it more familial and communally based,
Hmm.
because then when the time comes closer, like when it's like an hour before, like, mom's in the kitchen, like cooking, and then like we go to help her, and then like we all kind of like are eagerly anticipating the time of sunset. And then like, we set the table way beforehand and we're kind of like eager and ready. And then we like sit down and break our fast together. Um, and then kind of like hang out afterwards, drink some tea, go to the mosque, and then at the mosque it's kind of like, you see your friends, you see your like and whatnot, and then so it makes it more. I feel like, I mean, in general, I think it is always like in a Muslim majority country, you have like that aspect and more. But I guess when you don't have those other aspects of like kind of really feeling maybe the communal aspect, because I mean, here's like if you don't go to the mosque, then it's just the family aspect.
Yeah.
Um, but that's, I guess, what I think is kind of just like you get more family time and more like community time because you're going to a general meeting place, like porch like worship gatherings like every night for
Right.
one, like that's like a lot of um just time with friends and whatnot. I mean, of course you're not necessarily going just for the, I mean, you go there and then you meet beforehand and you meet afterhand. So that's where it's like, yeah, it's like going for the worship gathering, but you're also seeing each other before and after and kind of
Right.
interacting and whatnot.
And so in a place like the US, how can non-Muslim people support their Muslim friends who are in the midst of Ramadan?
Maybe something I think that would not necessarily help, but I think would be an element of support and kind of just like uh, camaraderie is like maybe like fasting with them for a day or like breaking
Hmm.
fast with them. Or like inviting them to break their fast at your house. I think that'd be like a very nice gesture. Be like wow, yeah, like thanks. I don't know, like that'd be, well, yeah, because then it shows like, yeah, like I see what you like. I know what you're doing. Like here, let me open my space for you, or like let me join your space for a day or something. Um, Definitely not necessary, but I think from like friends, um, that would be like something nice.
Yeah.
Uh, you don't necessarily want like you don't just like be invited by a random person like, hey, well actually I mean if they're your neighbors, but like again, neighbors are not necessarily random. But yeah.
Are there any fun stories that you remember that come to mind when you think of past months of Ramadan?
Hmm. Um yeah. I mean, I'm not necessarily the best storyteller or anything, but they're just like kind of some nice memories. Um some include so there's two levels of like mm, um not two levels. There's just two different kind of like optional night prayers. So one is like during Ramadan, there's one which is like, like an hour and a half after you break fast, and then you go and like, go do engage in like prayer and whatnot. Prayer in this like Islamic sense of prayer, where it's like, the repetitions that I've talked to you about.
Yeah.
And through that time, they're going through like the whole Quran. So like, in each like there's typically like an hour and a half to 2 hours of prayer. It depends on what mosque you go to. Some people do it differently, but it's generally like around an hour to 2 hours. And they're like in each cycle, each repetition, they're like, reading like a page or a page and a half of Quran. But then there's another prayer which is like kind of throughout the whole year, but you still do it with it during the month of Ramadan, which is like something called tahajjud, which is like late night prayer, like past midnight. Like
Hmm.
this is like when people are asleep and then you're up praying. And they like during the last 10 nights of Ramadan, like the mosque, or at least the one that I grew up next to, would have these night prayers or like late night prayer sessions, and those would be really really cool because that's like, again, during summertime, like you don't have a bedtime, so to speak, and I'd go and just like you during, it's like it's something more special about when it's like at super late at night. You really feel that closeness. And those were always really really cool memories that I had. And also just like when I was younger, just like a bunch of like the kids would sleep at the mosque, and then like we'd hang out like at night. We'd kind of just have a giant sleepover at the mosque. We'd like wrestle and like play different games and just like do other things. I don't know, just like it's just like a giant sleepover of like 15 people, like 15 kids. Yeah, it was really nice. But like other nights, like we'd kind of just go to my friend's house and like at like a swimming pool, just go like late night swimming. Yeah. Also, I mean, even like last year, actually, I guess another like a nice little. It's not necessarily a story, but it's just like last year. So, you know, I was used to having Ramadan at home or like being home for Ramadan. But last year, the whole month was completely within the school year. And like initially, I was like, man, this is gonna be lame. But like kind of on the whole line of like, you kind of during this month, you kind of like have, there's a familial and communal aspect. But like we had 3 apartments like right next to each other that we all knew each other. We had like 15 guys. And you know, when that time, when like sunset came closer, like we'd all be back in the apartments, like we'd all be cooking, we'd like break our fast together. There was just like a real big bonding time throughout all of like last year that would happen. Like really kind of some stupid bad habits, like playing like video games at night and kind of just like all night. Like it did not work well with school at all. I don't know how we made it work, but we somehow did.
That's funny.
But yeah, so that was kind of, again, not, I mean, yeah, I guess not necessarily a story. Also, like 3 years ago, we went on like sunrise hikes. So like after, like, you know, you eat a bunch before sunrise, and then like we just go on a hike. Like Bishops one day, we hiked Avila Ridge another day, and then did like Serenity Swings another one. And those were like really chill times.
Sweet.